and thank you to all of you for tuning in. Just a note about the picture. I'm not really looking for survey responses from outer space. Amateur radio is one of my hobbies, and that's an antenna with which we can talk via satellites. But enough of that. Let me talk to you about a project that I'm very excited about. And I also want to thank you all for joining. We had over 500 registrants from 9 countries, 43 states, and the District of Columbia. So thank you for being here. It's my honor to have a half hour of your time to share results from one of my favorite projects over the past 5 years. So the project I'm presenting on is the Midwest Energy Survey. It's a tracking study that we have been doing since 2007 to understand residential attitudes, perceptions, and activities related to energy efficiency. It started in 2007 to understand how climate change was beginning to fit into the picture of personal actions related to energy and energy efficiency, but a lot of it more recently has been focused more on energy efficiency. We have done this since 2007. The most recent survey was in 2011 with 2,426 respondents, mostly from Wisconsin and the Middle West, because that's where we are, but we have a national comparison group which we use to see how we compare to the country overall, and that is primarily what I'm presenting to you on. So you get the national picture of American attitudes and perceptions. That sample consists of 300 respondents, half of whom took a survey in October and November of last year via random digit dial telephone. The other half took it via web response. I'll be covering 5 different topics, the first of which is self-reported actions related to energy by American households. We call this turning off the energy spigot. But before I actually start with results, I would like to share with you one of about 100 questions that were in the survey instrument itself. Now don't worry, we didn't ask everybody the full 100 questions, but the full battery was 100 questions. And one of the key questions we asked was, have you taken any specific steps in the past year to reduce your home's energy usage? And if you click on the pie chart, we would love for you to answer that very question for yourself, for your household, and go ahead and click yes or no now. And then in the actual survey, one of the follow-up questions to that we asked was a verbatim where we said, please describe what you have done to reduce your home's energy usage, and then we coded those responses, and I'll go over those results in a moment too. So Andrea, do we have any results yet from people clicking already?
Yes, we do. I'm refreshing the results, and it looks like we have about 89% of our audience saying yes,
okay,
and corresponding about 11% saying no.
Okay, great.
At this point.
Thank you. So a lot of you are taking steps to save energy in the home, and that's what our audience told us, our survey respondents told us as well. 73% of them said, I've done something in my home in the past year. Now I'd like you to think for a moment, what have you done? When we asked that question of the respondents in a verbatim, people gave us on average 4 different actions that they have taken. So I'll spend a moment to talk about the who behind that 73%. Who is reporting to us that they're taking actions at home? People who did so represent all age groups, and both homeowners and renters. And we saw some slight differences in some other demographic categories, among which was that households of 3 or more people tended to be more likely to have taken some steps to save energy at home, and the one-person households were less likely. College graduates were more likely. People who only attended high school or only had a high school diploma were less likely to have taken actions. Republicans were more likely than people affiliated or who self-affiliate with other political parties. Upper middle income individuals, those earning between $75,000 and $100,000 a year, were more likely to have taken action. And men who were responding to our survey were more likely to have taken action, but keep in mind they are responding on behalf of a household, which in most cases includes a male and a female. So it may just be that men are more likely to have self-reported. It does not necessarily mean that there are more actions in male households than female. So the actions that people reported to us in the verbatim were a lot of the standard energy efficiency measures that those of us in the industry keep telling people that they can take. A lot of it was lighting related, appliance related, and heating, cooling related. 58% of respondents told us that they had installed more efficient lights, which probably meant installing compact fluorescent lights and replacing incandescents. 51% said that they had adjusted their thermostat either upward or downward, depending on whether it's heating or cooling season. 49% said that they were turning lights off more regularly. Now the next one, windows and doors, is one that always catches my attention because either replacing or tightening windows and doors, especially replacing, tends not to be cost effective compared to other things you can do to save energy, yet we always get very high numbers of people telling us that those are measures that they're taking. Other steps people reported to us were adding insulation in some level of their house, turning off appliances and electronics more, or unplugging them, weatherizing, which means weather stripping or caulking, and selecting more efficient appliances when they do replace appliances. So we also asked what people think that these various measures can save them, whether or not they have taken them. And we ran respondents through a series of 8 measures and asked them, do you think you could save no money, a few dollars a year, tens of dollars a year, hundreds of dollars a year, or don't know how much you could save if you took that measure in your house? And then we coded the responses. And here's an example of one of those questions we asked. So we had people respond that way for replacing 10 incandescent light bulbs with compact fluorescents in their house. And as you can see on this chart, 16% of respondents think that that wouldn't save them any money, whereas 9% think it could save them hundreds of dollars, and 11% thought didn't know. Everybody else was in between. Now, we coded those responses, granted they are very broad ranges, but we quantified them, assigning a $5 value to people who said a few dollars, $50 to people who said tens of dollars, and $200 to people who said hundreds of dollars, in order to estimate what people across the whole sample thought that they can save. And when you add up the numbers that way, respondents were telling us that they think they can save about $40 a year. Energy Star is advertising about $60 of savings if you replace 10 incandescents. So people aren't that far off. So here's the full list of measures that we asked about. The savings estimates range all the way from about $100 a year down to $35, depending on which measure it is. And what's interesting here is that windows show up again, with people on average thinking that they can save almost $100 a year by replacing 3 leaky windows in their house. Granted, that'll vary greatly based on what kind of climate you live in, but some of these numbers are off from what reality would tell us a little bit more than others, and I think this sort of information can be very helpful to program efforts to either utilities that are giving energy-saving tips to their customers, or energy efficiency programs that are advocating for certain energy-saving measures to help recalibrate and readjust people's expectations. So moving on to the second topic I wanted to cover today, we call this, it's the economy stupid, or is it? Over the past 4 years, as I'm sure you've noticed, there's been a lot of media coverage and a lot of attention paid to the economy, jobs, unemployment, and people's general financial state. So we wanted to explore how that was affecting energy efficiency and people's actions or perceptions, and what we could learn from that. So when we asked a broad question up front, very first question on the survey, where we were trying to find out how people thought, or what societal issues people were most concerned about, including such things as the economy, energy, the environment, climate change, but also such things as national security, public health, and so forth. We found that the economy indeed was the #1 concern of people at the time. More than 6 out of 10 respondents said that they were very concerned about the economy, represented by the red bar on the chart that you can see here, with another 3 out of 10 saying that they were somewhat concerned. So the economy clearly was on people's minds, and as you can see here, it was the #1 concern. So we wanted to know, one of the reasons we asked this question is we wanted to know how do issues like the environment, energy, and climate change fit in comparison. And here you can see how they do fit. The environment came in as being a higher level concern than energy or climate change, and climate change was the second lowest level of concern among the 10 issues we asked about, second only to consumerism, or only ahead of consumerism. To look at it a different way, at the time that we did the survey, unemployment in the United States was about 9%. So you know that those households were affected. But 48% of our respondents told us that they felt worse off than they thought they were 4 years prior, before the economic downturn hit. In addition, 82% of respondents said that they were trying to cut back on their household expenses. And when we asked which ones, it was pretty much everything, with one exception, education and childcare. But other than that, they were cutting back on food, trying to cut back on housing expenses, energy costs. It ran the gamut of all typical kinds of household expenses. And then another 2/3 said that they had deferred a major purchase, which can have implications, obviously, for investment in energy upgrades to one's home as well, which is the reason we asked that question. So we wanted to then cross the concern that people have about the economy and other issues with their self-reported action to save energy, to see if we can tease out what the drivers are behind people's choices to save energy in their home. So this chart that you're looking at shows that about 3/4 of respondents who said that they were concerned about the economy, either very concerned or somewhat concerned, reported having taken energy-saving measures at home, while people who were less concerned about the economy were less likely to have taken energy-saving steps. When we look at it, look at the same crosstab for concern about the environment, we see a very similar picture. Between 3/4 and 80% of respondents who said that they were concerned about the environment had taken actions, but a lesser number who were not concerned about the environment were. So those two do seem to be drivers, or at least associated with saving energy at home and attempts to do so. So we also wanted to find out which one of those was the stronger driver. Obviously, a greater number of people are concerned about the economy, as you saw before, than about the environment, but is one a stronger driver than the other? When we looked at that, 41% of respondents who weren't concerned about either issue were taking energy-saving steps. Then when we looked at people who were concerned about the economy, 68% were taking energy-saving steps. So you see a bump there. You see an increase probably associated with economic concerns. 83% of respondents who were concerned about the environment and not the economy were taking energy-saving steps, though. So you see an additional bump where the environment appears to be a stronger driver. And then 78% of respondents who were concerned about both issues had taken energy-saving steps at home. So shifting on to our third topic of the presentation, we also were looking at the issue of energy education and where people get their information for how they can save in their home. And what we found, and this has been a consistent story since we began the survey in 2007, is that people look to their energy provider. They look to their utility. When we asked an open-ended question after the series on what you were doing in the home, on where would you get your information or where would you turn for ideas, insights, 73% of our national respondents said, I would look to my utility. And a third said that they would look to a retailer, a hardware store, or a contractor. 23% mentioned an energy efficiency program, and then the numbers go down from there. So we looked more closely at what channels that utilities provide energy information through people had at top of mind and where they would look. And when we coded their verbatim responses that way, 58% told us that they were thinking of calling the utility. They had the call center as top of mind for a way to get energy-saving tips. 37% mentioned the utility's website, and then 16% mentioned the bill stuffers that many utilities provide along with their bills, often including energy-saving tips for the customers. So to look at this at a from a slightly different angle, we also were curious what people expected from the utility. Were they looking for energy-saving information? Were they looking for help to save energy from the utility? Now, we didn't ask these questions of the national sample, but I do have Wisconsin statewide results, which I presume are not that different from what we would see across the nation. And when we asked how important it is to people that the utility provide help in reducing usage, 4 out of 10 respondents said that that was very important. Very important meaning either a 9 or a 10 on a 10-point scale, with about another 4 out of 10 or another 40% saying it was somewhat important, which we defined as a 6, 7, or 8 on the 10-point scale. So where does that fit in context? Well, the number one concern among Wisconsinites was having very few outages. People want reliable service. 71% of our respondents from the state told us that that was very important, followed by providing or receiving energy at the lowest possible cost. Help reducing usage was about halfway through the various utility characteristics we tested, followed by environmental protection, which we asked as voluntary measures that go beyond what's required by codes and standards or regulation. And then also ahead of climate change, which again we asked as voluntary measures that the utility does beyond what's required of them. The 4 issues that I have circled on this chart, however, it seems to me are all connected with saving energy at home. People might think that they want the lowest cost energy that they can get, but what it really comes down to is how much they're paying for energy, and if they use less, they have to pay less. So help that they receive from whatever source in reducing their usage helps them achieve a lower bill, if not a lower cost, or if not a lower rate. The same is true of help reducing usage, and then of course if people are using less energy, there's an environmental and a climate benefit in that as well. All right, moving on to the next topic. I'm calling this choice mentality. We were curious and we wanted to explore whether the way that people go about making everyday choices in life tells us something about how they treat energy in their home and how rigorous they are about attempting to save energy and not use as much. So for the Midwest sample, this would be the a series of 9 states, including Wisconsin and surrounding parts of, well, this part of the United States, for those of you overseas, ranging from the North and South Dakota area, the Upper Plains, all the way over to Ohio. We asked respondents from that region how much they would agree that their everyday choices are guided by the following 5 factors: personal beliefs and values, making practical choices, addressing needs, desires, or following recommendations of others, following their instincts, or doing what they consider to be most pleasant or that makes them happy. And for each of these, we had them respond on a 5-point scale, beginning with "it doesn't fit me at all" to "yes, that describes me very well." When we compared those responses to people's self-reports on saving energy in the home, we found that 2 of them seemed to have some correlation between the way that people go about making choices and whether they were attempting to save energy at home. One of which was what I'll call the hedonists, people who are pleasure seekers who make choices primarily based or at least influenced by what makes them happy and recognize their decision making that way. Those who said that that does not describe them at all, 87% of those said that they were saving energy at home or attempting to, whereas only 69% of people who said this decision-making pattern describes me very well were saving or attempting to save energy at home. Similarly, but going in the other direction, people who said that they were guided by beliefs and values were more likely to be attempting to save energy at home or reporting that to us. Those who said that doesn't describe me at all, 40%, said that they were saving or attempting to save energy at home, but that doubles by the time you get to people who said that that fits them very well, that they follow their beliefs and they follow their values. I think this is interesting. It's a fairly light, basic analysis so far. We only have 300 respondents from the Midwest sample group to do this analysis on, but I am looking to do additional research along these lines and see what we can find out if there's a way of segmenting based on self-reported everyday choice methods and mechanisms. Okay, finally, the last topic I want to cover today is on climate change, which is how the survey got started in the first place. In 2007, when we started, we wanted to find out whether climate change was a motivating factor that could be used to spur energy-efficient action by individuals in their personal lives and at home. And at the time, we found that it appeared not to be so yet, but we have continued to track climate change perception over time ever since. So we're back to national results here, representing all 50 states of the United States. And we ask in the survey 3 questions that we use, or the responses of which we use, to classify people into either believing in climate change or not. And for those that believe in climate change, separating those by whether they think it is human-caused or not primarily human-caused. The reason that last distinction matters is people who believe in human-caused climate change would presumably think that some human action could counteract it, whereas if you think that it is a completely natural cycle, there's no whole lot people can do, and your responses will be more adaptation than attempted prevention. So at the national level, we found in 2011 that almost 60% of Americans believe in anthropogenic or human-caused climate change. And another 20% believe that there is indeed climate change happening, but it is not primarily human-caused. And 21% believe that climate change is not currently occurring, nor will it occur in the next few decades. So how does that compare to previous years? Well, the first year that we asked this question at the national level was 2008, and on this chart you can see that after 2008 there was a dip in the level of belief in climate change at the national level, and there's been a small rebound to the 2011 results. That's not true in all parts of the country, however. If we look at Wisconsin results on that very same question, we see a continued dip where a smaller number of respondents believe in human-caused climate change than they had in 2009 or in 2008. So there seems to be some geographic variation in how people are perceiving climate change. So what does that mean? Well, my assessment would be that climate change for the broad audience is probably still not a primary motivator to spur energy-efficient actions. There would be better messaging and better altruistic modes to attempt to appeal to. The best one is probably environmental concern. The reason I say that is that when we compared the people who are concerned about climate change and people who are concerned about the environment, we found that almost everybody who's concerned about climate change is also concerned about the environment. In fact, only 3% of our respondents were more concerned about climate change than they were concerned about the environment, whereas 43% were more concerned about the environment than they were concerned about climate change. Or to look at it a different way, when we correlated, or when we ran a simple regression model on self-reported practices at home with the level of concern that people had about the environment, about climate change, and about energy, it was the environment that came up as most significant and most likely to have influenced people's choices, or at least be correlated with people's choices to save at home. So those are the prepared slides I have. Looks like we've got about 3 minutes or so for questions. So I'll take a few from the questions that you have submitted, and don't worry if I don't get to your question. I'll make an attempt to answer them offline. As long as I have your email address, I'll get back to you as best as I'm able. So thank you. Keep those questions coming. Okay, so the first question I see is, do you think this feeling of being worse off is just an important readjustment of expectations? Based on personal debt numbers, we were overspending to a great degree in previous years. People should be deferring purchases more. Well, I think that's a very personal choice. It depends on, it could well be that people are realigning. In fact, when we asked, the one piece of data that I have on that is we asked why people were cutting back on their expenses, and from the national sample, about equal numbers were saying that they were doing so because of reduced income in their household, because of significantly increased costs in their essential purchases, and because they were just attempting to save more, be more frugal. So that last third could be what you're saying, a readjustment in people's expectations and how they want to be more cautious with spending versus having savings, or just adjusting to fear or concerns about the economic climate. So next question is, how much energy dollar savings does Energy Star say is actually saved versus perception? Well, on that one slide that I had up, I was comparing, or I was presenting what people thought they could save from replacing 10 incandescent bulbs with 10 compact fluorescent bulbs, and Energy Star's numbers on their website advertise about $6 a year per bulb. So I just took that number, so that would add up to $60 a year. And what people think is all over the map. On that one slide, I've forgotten the exact number now, but more than 10% believe that they wouldn't save any money at all. So obviously there's a misperception there, or maybe some kind of reality in their home that for whatever reason CFLs would not work, or maybe they were thinking, I've already switched everything, so it doesn't apply to me. It's hard to tell from the survey responses, but there's a great variation in what people think, and readjusting that to real expectations, or to the most likely numbers, would be helpful, so that people don't over-expect or under-expect and then not end up taking the action. So it looks like I'll take, one more question, Andrea? Okay, one more question. Yep. So last question that I'll answer on the air, but again, I will make an effort to respond to you directly via email. From your survey of actions taken, did any respondents mention air sealing as opposed to insulation or weatherizing? What is the awareness level of air infiltration and air sealing? It seems that these concepts are still very unclear in the minds of the broader public. That's an excellent question. I don't have the numbers on the top of my head, or of my brain at the moment, so I will email you that response or some exact numbers. We coded, in the verbatim question, we got a variety of responses. People used all sorts of different words, and we coded anything that looked like air sealing, caulking, weather stripping as weatherization. And some people were probably thinking something broader. There were a few cases of weatherization, true whole house weatherization as well, but the use of that word was primarily ours, not the survey respondents. So I hope that helps. And with that, I want to thank you very much for joining me.